April 3rd, 1968, the lost spaceship touches down at the movies to discover that primates have taken over the Earth. And that was the first Planet of the Apes film. Today in 2024, the franchise is still going strong, with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes around the corner, getting ready to show us how the ape society is progressing. But in the summer of 2011, we got our first look at how the apes took over in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Greetings, Designing Hollywood movie fans and beyond. I am your host, Oliver Ricketts, and I love cheesy mid-2000s science fiction fantasy films. You know the ones I'm talking about, because you know it when you see it. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, the original Saw films, Ang Lee's Hulk, the X-Men trilogy. There's something about this type of movie that you just don't see anymore. And I believe Rise of the Planet of the Apes is at the very tail end of this era in film. Yes, this movie is about the ape uprising and the end of the human race. Dark and dire stuff. But it's also never afraid to be funny or campy. And it remembers that science fiction is above all supposed to be fun. Alzheimer's patients relearn how to play the piano. Malfoy is comically mean to animals in a way no human being ever could be. A veterinarian finds out that James Franco has a chimpanzee as a pet and never utters a word against it. The real world is not present in this film, and that is okay. Because there's also something really precious about the tone here. Like I said, something we don't see anymore, and something that I miss. But I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Speaking of this tone and era in film, if you love movies from the early 2000s and this kind of goofy movie theater fun, give this video a like and maybe consider subscribing to this channel. I love this sort of movie and I know I can't be alone, and I'm sure that I will be talking about some similar films in the future that you won't want to miss. And if you're a fan of movies in general, you'll probably also want to check out the Designing Hollywood podcast, where we talk to industry professionals who have worked on films of all different kinds and likely have been behind the scenes of your favorite movie. If you are a film fan, you'd never want to miss it. And so, rewatching Rise of the Planet of the Apes in preparation for the new Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was nothing short of an absolute treat. It's funny because we call this prequel Apes trilogy, Rise, Dawn, and War, the Matt Reeves trilogy. But Matt Reeves only came into the fold in the second film and brought an entirely different tone with him for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And those second two films in this trilogy are aesthetically and stylistically all Matt Reeves. But Rise of the Planet of the Apes is almost a totally different flavor. It is so distinctly different from its two sequels, but not in a bad way. They're both flavors that I like, because director Rupert Wyatt, at the very least, makes this movie his own, with enough silliness to match the original Planet of the Apes movies, but grounded just enough in reality that it didn't quite slip over into Tim Burton remake territory, which was a film that I personally did not care for. In Rise of the Planet of the Apes, a brilliant scientist experiments to cure Alzheimer's, inadvertently leading to the development of intelligence in apes. As the apes gain self-awareness and revolt against human oppression, a battle for dominance ensues, ultimately setting the stage for the planet's future as depicted in the classic Planet of the Apes films. And of course, one of the most enthralling things about this movie is the performances given by the cast. In my opinion, Andy Serkis gives such a masterclass performance as Caesar in all three Apes films that I think it's a great example of why the Oscars should consider doing a motion capture actor category at the Academy Awards. Or better yet, start considering more performances like this for their traditional lead and supporting actor and actress categories. Because this performance requires an actor to go from portraying an adolescent to a burly teenager to an adult warlord. And it's all done in the span of one movie, and it's done beautifully. And at least in this film, most of that performance must be conveyed physically through body language rather than dialogue, which is a whole other side of acting that I don't think we see reflected all too much in modern cinema. What Andy Serkis is able to convey as this character in this movie using only his body is nothing short of miraculous. And of course, when Caesar does finally speak, it shakes that theater. The crowd goes wild. It is one of the most shocking and moving parts of the story. And all he says is one word. No! And I still remember my theater in 2011 erupting in applause. This is the best delivery of the line "no" since Darth Vader himself. Caesar joins an elite group of silent characters who only have one plot-decimating line towards the end of their project, up there with Ferb, or Silent Bob, or the sister from Don John, which is also a very underrated movie, in my opinion. But that reaction to just a monkey yelling the word no at the end of this movie shows us the power of this film because of the audience's investment. So much of this film, including this scene, could be played for laughs, because it is, after all, a movie about a really smart monkey recruiting some slightly dumber monkeys to take over the city of San Francisco. But instead, we the audience have been sucked in by just the right balance of campy silliness and realism. And most importantly, the movie knowing when to take the over-the-top subject matter seriously. Moments like this are what cement Rise of the Planet of the Apes firmly in the A tier, and are likely the reason that the movie was so successful that it spawned as many sequels as it did. And along with Andy Serkis, this movie has some other MVP performances from John Lithgow and Tom Felton, who are both standouts in their supporting roles. Lithgow is just so sympathetic, and perhaps it's because of our predisposed attachment to him in similar fatherly roles.
My name is George Hent.
George what?
George Hent.
Watching him decline mentally, especially if you've watched a parent or grandparent go through something similar, is so heartbreaking. But at the same time, there are so many moments of levity with that character where he gets to be a father figure and a mentor, and that makes you so attached to him. You want the best for this character and you're hoping for this miracle cure. And I think a lot of that comes down to how well John Lithgow handles this material. And conversely, Tom Felton is brilliant in this movie, playing Draco Malfoy, but dialed up to about 1,000. I actually seriously think you'd be hard-pressed to find a character in another movie who is so detestable, as wretched as him. I seriously don't know why Dodge Landon isn't listed more often on the internet's numerous most hated characters list, along with Joffrey Jones and Harry Potter's own Dolores Umbridge. Because not only is the character of Dodge Landon an animal abuser and hater who works at a wildlife sanctuary, but don't worry, he has hate in his heart for his fellow man as well, and it makes for such a fun bad guy. But of course, you wouldn't expect anything less from a character with Brian Cox as a father.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
And this brings me to our question of the day, where we can have a little conversation about films here as a community. And the question is, who is your most hated fictional character in a movie or TV show? I think Dodge Landon might be pretty high up there for me. And as such, it is a moment of absolute genius when they give Tom Felton the famous line.
Take your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape!
And that brings me to another element that this movie handles extremely well, and that's fan service. And again, this is a sign of the times that the movie was made in. This is before we got requels of Star Wars and Jurassic Park. It's before the total rise of Marvel at the box office, when they started rolling out cameo fests every year. In this before time, fan service was often used sparingly, which is a noble concept. Here, in 2011, the filmmakers know that that the last Planet of the Apes film had come out 10 years prior, and it was poorly received. Moreover, the beloved films from the franchise were now decades old. It's not that there were not Planet of the Apes fans in the audience, but they were hedging their bets that there would be a lot of newcomers to the franchise, and that 100% of the audience could not possibly be made up of dedicated Planet of the Apes fans. It was possible that there were just some people in this audience who wanted to see a cool movie. And because of this, Rise of the Planet of the Apes is able to use fan service sparingly to a great effect. We get the occasional reference to the astronauts who are taking off in this movie in the background, who will eventually land in Caesar's New World Order in the original Planet of the Apes film. The other references to the previous films are really limited to just a few standout lines that everybody remembers. They do not overstay their welcome, and they do not overtake the movie. You could watch this movie and get the same level of enjoyment out of it whether you've seen every Planet of the Apes movie or none of them. Folks, all in all, I miss many of the sensibilities that are on display in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and it is the Planet of the Apes film that made me a fan, and for that it will always hold a special place in my heart. Much like many of the other films that I do deep dives into right here on the Designing Hollywood YouTube channel. If you love movies and talking about film, you'll want to subscribe and like this video, as well as check out our Designing Hollywood podcast, where we talk to industry professionals who have made films that you love. For Designing Hollywood, I'm Oliver Ricketts, and until next time, get out there and go see a movie.